Thank you, everyone, for joining us as we continue Art Gives Us Hope. I am, again, Carl Evans, the founder of the Hope for Us Network, and we're moving right into our next segment. For those of you wondering what I just did with the wardrobe change, if you remember, that great interview with Dom was a pre-record. Some of the scheduling for this weekend is going to be some pre-records. And we've got great activity going on. Thank you, everyone who's watching with us already. Great activity in the chat going down. And we have our next guest on, another phenomenal artist. This is Myron Laban. We're going to be doing the intros and get into some origin stories and great talks with this phenomenal artist. But first, let me just do a little housekeeping. Of course, you know that we've got a raffle for special event poster prints by the artist So, who will be joining us tomorrow. If you go to AGUH.org, you can get yourself some raffle tickets. We also have a great collaboration opportunity with one of our guest features that you can go to AGUH.org and get shirts there, with proceeds being split to support the creatives and the organization as well. And if you're looking forward to the private screenings on Saturday night and Sunday night, you can also pick up your free private screening tickets. We have to make them private screenings because some of the productions are still in Film Fest. So with that out of the way, let's get going. Myron, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so hyped. Full disclosure, Myron is a friend of the family, if you will, and I'm super hyped. He was one of the first artists we were able to reach out to. And if you're wondering, there's a little sneak peek. I've already got my, no matter where I go, this is a new office I'm setting and transmitting out of, but wherever I go, I always got my Myron originals, a little bit of Myron love. But Myron is a dynamic, creative, of course, with the painting type art, but we've got a lot of things to talk about. So let's jump right into it. Myron, thank you for joining us, my brother.
Thank you, Carl. Thanks for having me. Right now, actually.
Oh, yeah. And see, that's perfect for live streaming. I think, this is great. So it's kind of like a process. It's a little bit of a process live stream. And I think what would be cool is, for folks who may not be familiar, because your work is not just regionally based. You've got, especially when you think about the street art style, you're not only national, you're international in a way.
Yeah.
But let's get a little origin story from Myron. Let people know like where you came from and what's that all about first.
So I was born in Des Plaines, or Lutheran General, which is like Park Ridge. I've been here pretty much my whole life. I've always been an artist since being in kindergarten all the way up till right now. I remember being like in elementary, and every time I'd make a cool drawing, I'd put it under my bed. So I'd have a bunch of just drawings underneath my bed. And I kept doing that up until I think middle school is where I started to hone in on like my art. I was in art class, and I was always a kid who was really good at art, and so I started taking it more seriously. And then high school, I took art 1 through 4, and then I just always been doing it. It's just been a passion of mine. And I think my first year of pharmacy school, I started thinking about doing street art. So I started finding spots and making murals. I found buildings, they would let me paint on their walls, and I would just paint murals. And then it's kind of become what it is today, where these murals have kind of led to be like greater opportunities for me, so leading to painting malls. And then I would go to France, and I painted in France, and I painted in Spain, and now I'm gonna I have a lot of stuff planned, but it's all just incremental.
And that's funny that you say it, because you're a little bit of a polyglot. It's both multiple mediums. You're also, and I kind of want to spend a little time on the different versions. Also a music artist too,
Mm-hmm.
So let's, I think what I kind of want to do, because there's so much to jump in with your great work, is kind of, let's talk about the mural part first. So,
okay.
Young Myron is doing the good thing, and where does the street hits come from? What was the sort of like, what was your first one? What was your baby steps? Was it kind of just, well, I don't want to snitch on anybody, gorilla, but I mean, like, what was kind of your first sort of steps into being like, I want people to see what I'm working on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it was more so like me at the time. I was making a lot of cool paintings, and I'd say this is around 2014. I was just painting pictures, nothing specific. And then I started seeing artists and how they would, take an idea and kind of brand it and make it in a million different ways. And so, okay, sorry, I was reading something. So I was looking at people like J.C. Rivera, Centrock, Hubie Brantley, Matthew Hoffman, and all these people were all around Chicago, and they like were really notable. You look at the work and you knew who it was exactly. So I started looking at their art and I said, I think I want to do something like that. Also around that time, I had this tattoo, which is the uplift figure actually, which I kept drawing and drawing and drawing because I was going to get it tattooed. So it's kind of second nature to me. So I'm like, this could be my thing. And so I just went for it. I started painting a lot of pictures and I started painting murals of this on the walls, and it's kind of become a lot bigger than what I thought it would be, but that's kind of how it started.
And I think that's probably that's a kind of a good lead in is to let's talk about uplift for a second. I think that's a good I think that was one of the first places that I got to engage with you. And quite frankly, I think because you have such a dynamic outpouring right now, but I think that might be one of the more familiar ways, especially with the street work, people might have, you've kind of owned a brand around it, right? So, let's talk about uplift a little bit.
Oh yeah, uplift is more. It's kind of like a mantra. It's just an idea that to keep moving forward, know that things are gonna be okay. It's just like a symbol for life and hardship and overcoming struggle. So for me, it was a reminder. And, when you're experiencing something, other people are most likely experiencing the same thing. So I figured it would be helpful to put that out in the world. And so I've found a lot of people who've identified with it. And I started making posters and prints and paintings. And yeah, so started making hoodies and merch, and people loved it. And so I've been doing it ever since. Now I'm gonna drop a figure even. Let me show you this actually.
Yeah, I want to. That's what I mean. Sort of getting into sculpturing.
This is a prototype.
So, and that is the quintessential uplift.
Yeah. The colors and everything.
So one of the things that really draws out, and we see here in chat, someone in chat just mentioned it, it gives me power. It's one of my favorite art things ever. Let's drill into that a little bit more. Kind of, a lot of your work has a real vibrancy. I think we're gonna pull up some of your work and screen share it. But when you talk about that sort of emotional support, that sort of like inspirational support, were there any particular reasons that you wanted to push uplift, or was it kind of just for you, like, what was the biggest connection point with it?
That's a good question. I always felt like you want to make something that can identify with people and help them out. And for me, art was always a way to talk to people. So there was never like a specific reason. It was just like I knew this would be helpful. I knew this would be able to make a difference. And so that's kind of where it came from. I never had any quota or specific vision for it. It just something I went with, and it became bigger than what I thought it could be. And yeah.
And hold on, eye in the sky, hold on to the image that we're on right now. because you can see uplift in the back of this image. But you know, I wonder about, do you ever feel like it was, sometimes when we talk about art, it's exclusively we're trying to put something out there, but especially because you're talking about you were influenced, or you were doing it since you were younger.
Yeah.
Was this kind of a thing where you were developing something that was sort of nurturing to your own mental health, and then it went outbound, or was it kind of like you liked the character, you put it out, and the way people responded told you to keep going forward? You know what I mean?
Well, I think it kind of became more specific towards mental health when I started adding words, like
Mm-hmm.
deserve to be happy, rain eventually goes away. When I started putting out these prints and combining them with my uplift character, I think that's when it started taking the primary mental health route. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting is, as people are seeing as we're scrolling through, and you can keep scrolling through Eye in the Sky, um, the vibrancy. So, kind of talking about your creative influences here. I mean, we talked about some of the great Chicago street artists who've made an impact and that influenced you on that level. But your colors and some of the way you deliver just packs so much energy and vibrancy that it's like moving, and it gives moving and life inside of these paintings. These two-dimensional things take on a lot of depth.
Yeah.
What are your influences? Getting real academic, classical, like your color palettes and things like that. What made that call to you?
I would say in regards to influence, I like pastels. I'm a really big fan of pastels. Um, I like Basquiat. Basquiat, I was looking at a painting of his in the Art Institute, and it's huge, and it has these bright blues. I don't know if you can see it behind me, but these bright blues, these pinks, and these yellows. He has these beautiful pastel colors. And Hebrew Brantley's colors, same thing with him. He uses these beautiful pastels. They're kind of neutral. So when you use a lot of these neutral colors, you can kind of let the foreground stand out. I was on Pinterest and I was looking at flowers. Pinterest is a lot of my digital paintings are inspired by Pinterest, because I look at flowers and I look at illustrations, and I'm such a huge fan of like flat illustration. This is a perfect example of flat illustration where the characters are they're really two-dimensional when you look at them. There's maybe one shade, but the characters are really flat. The flowers are flat. The sky has depth. The mountains have depth. So I get inspired at different times. Like, this is my whole illustration phase. This is probably the best illustration I've ever made, if I'm being honest, right here. Who else? Basketball. Love basketball. And I kind of have this like an inherent I go towards warm colors, bright and warm colors. I think that's something I inherently am drawn to. So,
there's another thing here that always stands out the more, and I'm going to speak prescriptively from my perspective. I don't want to narrate for anyone else, but one of the other things that I just thought was so powerfully fascinating is that I think too often times with art, especially in modern art, that people feel like they've got to like get themselves into a compartment, into like a sort of commercial, they got to commoditize themselves, everything is for profit.
Yeah.
And, it can be a very dangerous thing, especially when we're talking about intersections with ethnicity. People think, well, I can only do classical art, hip hop art, this, that, or the other. One of the things I love, and you got to hold on to this picture, Eye in the Sky. This one, hold on, this one, is just how it's like you've created this whole universe of visualization that isn't pigeonholed. It's very diverse. It has a lot of cultural flavors, but it also has a lot of these sort of like social, the mix of the florals you don't necessarily see in pictures that focus around a lot of Black folks. That might seem if you're an art student, you might get what I'm saying, but like people usually say like, okay, I'm doing landscapes and nature and that's that, or I'm going to do something like sports based and that's that, or people portraits and that's that. And you have this real sort of like diverse mixture with
Mm-hmm.
your work. And this is like a perfect example. I'm not trying to get all up in your grill, but like, do you sort of enter into your work realizing like I don't have any limitations, or kind of was that a mission of yours? The difference. Like
Oh
you
yeah.
didn't really think about it, so you just go for it, or it was like, nah, I'm not.
Well,
No borders.
I think people. I think people. I don't want to stay in any sort of box. I kind of make as I go. And obviously sometimes you want to be consistent because it might sell better, but like a lot of times I have ideas and I think they're cool and I just do them. That's really a lot of what I do. That's why I'm making music. That's why I'm making sculptures. That's why I'm making paintings. It's really just me believing in an idea and like going for it. That's it. You know.
Do,
Um,
do you ever catch yourself? You seem like you've got a clear vision, but do you ever
mhm.
catch yourself doubting or wondering?
Uh, I was talking to my friend yesterday, and it's we see all the people around us, blowing up and doing all these things, and you're getting like crazy, notoriety or whatever you say, and we're just like, man, we're on this level. People don't see that, but the only thing you can do is just keep working. I I know what I see, and sometimes I feel like it takes people or society or or the community to catch up. But like I'm just gonna keep working and keep getting better, and eventually I think um, the world's gonna catch up to me. So I never really get down because I know what I'm putting out is good, and as long as I don't need external validation to know that I'm good, you know, that's very important.
That's important. That's great.
Yeah.
And that's good to hear too, because I think whether you're engaging in this content right now or you're listening or watching this later, we know part of our audience are artists and aspiring artists, and doubt and confidence and measuring yourself is a big part of it. And I think it's really good insights. And I think it's also important, especially maybe it's not like it's not just a this year thing, but I think people sometimes get into their heads that to be creative nowadays, you have to exclusively be entering, you have to be thinking of it in a commercial value sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you hit it right. You're speaking some real truth there, that your work is not, that could almost be a hindrance, it sounds like, but you're going in directions like that speak to you. And I think it's powerful. I think a lot of people do sabotage themselves or can get caught up doing that. And I'm going to talk about, so let's talk about Loverboy for a second.
Yeah.
First, like we said, you've got a lot of different interests. So what was the process for how long you've been interested in music? And then we'll go into like the actual song.
I would say like even from high school, I was like, like I have a YouTube where I've been freestyling over YouTube beats even in high school. You know what I'm saying? Like I was always kind of into music. I'd always just like freestyle in the car or write, from high school until now. But I've never been like a professional musician, right? I've always known musicians. I've always been able to play simple chords and make simple loops. But it wasn't until last year when I kind of linked up with my friend Maurice. I had made a lot of art for his music, and I was like, "Well, I want you to help me make music." Um, and so I showed him my idea, and we got together, showed him the chord progression and the song, and he turned it into like a fully produced song. And so I recorded in his room, and we dropped it. And now we have two more songs we're about to finish this one single we're gonna put out. We have a third single that we're gonna put out in like a couple months, and yeah, it's really exciting. I just make music all the time, just not like on Ableton. It's just like on my ukulele or my guitar, you know?
Well, and I think one of the important things why I like to bring that up is one, song's great.
Yeah.
Network, do we have it? I think we gotta, as long as you don't file a DMCA strike on us, I think we can play it. We can play a little bit of it right now.
Pull it up.
Yeah, and it's available on Spotify, as you can see, and we'll make sure you can see links on our work too. Yeah, let's drop a little bit as we continue talking. Play a little bit of that. If we can get this, I don't know if the sound's gonna. Thank you so much, Network.
Yeah, that's me.
I know you've been drowning for way too long. Late night cravings, feeling way too strong. And if you wanna wait, then baby, that's okay. But I can't stay forever. You better pick up the pace. Lover boy always wants what he can't have. Wear his heart on the sleeve like the last dance. I'm always stuck in the motions. Got me down like I was deep in the ocean. I know you've been hurt. I know just how it feels. You've just been guarding your heart. You just been trying to heal. Lover boy, yeah. Girl, I'm stuck on you. Lover boy, yeah. I know you feel me too. Lover boy, yeah.
All right. Thank you, Network. You so quick on the point. I like it. There's a little, and you had your own flavor, so I'm just gonna speak for myself.
Yeah.
I had a little bit. I liked it a little of the West Indie beat action in there.
Uh-huh.
Not to say that that's what you're going for, but like, I was like, all right, it's like a mellow Sean Paul type early beat. If you can go way back. So that's cool. And why I want to highlight that again is celebrating you as this total artist. And a lot of the work that we're doing here at the network, when we talk about mental health and education and things like that, we want people to understand that the mental health discussion, for instance, isn't just talking about the point of crisis, which is critical, but it's talking about mental health from every facet, from wellness to the onset of troubles to the silence before things try to overwhelm us. And why we're talking with artists and doing this whole festival to celebrate self-expression is focused in the fact that we communicate our thoughts, feelings, and emotions through our expressions. That's how we communicate our mental health, is in the same way that bleeding and a fever communicates certain physiological issues. Not just singing and crying, but dancing, painting, shouting at the top of your lungs, being violent, being timid. All of these are features of communicating and expressing ourselves. And so with art, one of the things that I'm so thrilled with is your sort of multi-diverse or multifaceted, very diverse delivery. It's great. It's such a wonderful reflection of ourselves. We're not just sort of one-track peoples. And
yeah, exactly. We're multidimensional.
You really, and that's the perfect way. You really personify that in your work. There is no, I wouldn't want to pin you in a box and say, oh, he's this kind of artist, that kind of artist. For you, because even in your, talking about your merchandise, the things that you put on clothing and fashion-wise, because you've got your own kind of style too, I think. You bring out your own sort of original style. What are the kind of things you look for when you're putting together things that you want to put out on clothing, merch, and things like that?
So yeah, it just has to be aesthetically like beautiful to me. That's the first thing, and then the second thing is like, I was wearing one of my sweatshirts, but like also, the merch is a way. It can be a way to talk to people as well. But it could be just further promoting this idea of uplift, like things are going to be okay. So I was wearing this shirt today, and it says, "I hope you find your joy in the back," and the guy's reaching for a light. And And actually, I don't know if I can do a screen share. Am I able to do that here?
I think network can hook us up with that.
I don't know if I can do that. Oh, I can?
Yeah.
Tell me if I can do one of those. But I'm working on a new design, and I'm gonna put it out. I'm gonna put it out probably January, February. And so it's just something that I think is pretty. The colors are nice. It has to be comfy. You know, obviously, if you're gonna put out merch, you have to put something out that people want to wear, that people think is comfortable. So those are just things I think about. Oh wait, I can do. Share.
Yeah, if you look at the bottom of your
Okay, share screen. Here we go. You see it? Google Chrome would like to record this computer screen. Okay. Hold on. Is it working? Okay.
Worst case scenario, if you've got a link, like if it's a backdoor link, you might be able to just put it into our private chat, and network will be able to share it.
Oh, yeah. Let me do that later. So anyways, yeah, I'll cancel this and I'll send you guys. I don't know if I can send attachments. Can I send attachments in the private chat? No. I'll send you a PDF. Okay. Email. Anyways. So yeah, merch is the biggest thing that I think you have to make something that is comfortable.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I don't care how cool something looks. If it's not comfy, I'm probably not gonna wear it. So that's just like a little gem that I have for if you're trying to sell stuff to people.
Yeah, and while we're working on that, that kind of brings me to some other thoughts I wanted to talk about with you, and that you know, what are some of the things that you're interested in getting into that we haven't seen from you yet? I know we're about to check this thing, but like, what are some, you know, maybe even if it's like you want to keep things like close to the chest, so little teasers, if nothing.
Well, we're hopping into the NFT world. So, I recently linked with a programmer, a software engineer. So what we're doing is top secret at the moment, but I think the NFT space is the next space that I want to get into, especially the potential of like what you can do with it and technology. It's pretty crazy.
And you know, that's another good example. I think that brings me to another thought, as a way I might continue to describe a lot of your production, is that it seems like you're willing to take chances, to innovate, to move into unfamiliar territory. Because yeah, you know, I think some people only see NFT and they see like this sort of quick pop culture reference to it, and so it's maybe, you know, a lot of people aren't familiar all the ins and outs, so they just think it's kind of this passing thing, or maybe it's silly because they don't necessarily see. Just because there's one story out about the concept right now doesn't tell the full picture of what that thing is, you know?
Yeah.
Video games, streaming TV, any sort of technology, any sort of like new endeavor, doesn't necessarily, that first impression doesn't necessarily tell us the whole story. So I think that's really interesting that you're going in that direction too, because it does take a will of vision and a willingness to sort of push through whatever initial information is out there. You could have easily been like, NFT, nah, I'm gonna work on this thing.
No,
you know?
I think you have to think in the future. You know, I think it's important to think in the future. It's like investing. You know, you have to see 5-10 years ahead of time, and when you do, you see how lucrative things can be. So that's like something I've been really trying to work at. It's like rest in peace for Virgil Abloh, but I was watching a bunch of his interviews and he was talking about how, like, you know, it's all about the bigger picture. You know, you have to be looking 50, 100 years in advance. And like, obviously that's like very hard to think about, but it's important if you want to make something that's sustainable.
And that's a good point. And bringing up Virgil is, I actually like that, because one of the things Virgil said a couple of years ago in an interview was on the point of talking about being a visionary and like, where do you go next? Is he had once said that he likes to see where things are and kind of like what other people are doing. And then the thing he's after isn't being like, oh, they're using color, they're using red, so let's try and look at new things in red.
Yeah.
He said, look at where people are going, and the thing I ask is what's not there.
Yeah.
And I want to be the thing that's not there. And I think that you seem to echo a lot of that. And I think for our viewers, a big thing to pay attention to that I would suggest is the willingness to not necessarily govern your creative spirit, your sense of intuition by measuring yourself or comparing yourself with what's around you. I think that's whether we're talking the creative space or the just living day-to-day space, I think there's a really dangerous, it almost becomes a habit forming that we want to measure ourselves and compare ourselves with everyone around us. And that's how we determine our success, our happiness, our joys. And a lot of your work, Myron, to me anyway, seems to represent someone who's kind of willing to just cut their own path and move forward. Network. Let me know if Network. If you want to jump into a screen share, that's perfectly fine. But
okay.
One of the coolest things I wanted to also bring up is I've noticed that you're going back to the statues and things like that. Do you look at other types of stuff like stickers or even the world of just toy work?
Yeah.
Not just are those kind of things that really stand out to you, or are there any other elements that you haven't been able to put your art to that you're, we talk about NFTs and things like that? But
well, I want to make a big statue one day, like a big statue, and it's fun. One time I was in the West Side and they're doing a groundbreaking for this roller rink they were gonna build in Garfield Park, and the mayor was there, and the head of the park district was there. The ex-head of the park district was there, and I went up to him after, and I was like, I want to build a big ass sculpture. Who do I talk to? And he's like, well, you talk to me. He's like, I can link you with my guy. And so like I talked to his guy who kind of heads the art in the Chicago Park District, and that's something I really want to do. I just have to do it. And I need money, like a lot of money, to do something like that. But like that's where I see myself next.
Well, that's great. And you know what? It doesn't putting the truth out into the universe is one part of the steps of
exactly. And one time I was jogging and I come across a statuary, like people who make statues. It's like, so I walked in and I was like, yo, like, let's work. Like, how much does this cost? What if I wanted to do this? And I showed them my ideas and they're like, yeah, of course we can do it. I was like, oh, okay. So like, I think things fall into your lap when you speak it into existence. I'm really excited. It's a matter of timing and getting the funding and doing all that stuff. But I really feel like that's like the next wave of me. It might be a couple years from now. It might be 2 years from now. I'm just gonna have to see.
Well, that's great. And another part about that is, and I just want to sort of triple down, is going back to this idea about speaking it into existence.
Mm-hmm.
Some people can laugh at that, but again, it's very easy for us to doubt ourselves. And another feature of that, and talking about self-expression, is the idea of you have an idea and you like it inside, but you're terrified to throw it out there because you're worried about being beaten down, judged on, that kind of a thing. And that's something that probably hits a lot of people. And it's not something where just a magic wand, you tell people, well, no, don't do that.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it is also speaking something into existence is also kind of keeping yourself accountable for it.
Okay, go on.
So it's not like you're waiting for some magic thing to happen. It's just more like I'm saying that this is going to happen, and you kind of subconsciously take these steps. It's in your head, and you're thinking about how it's going to happen. So I think that's another way speaking things into existence helps you. First, it gives you the confidence to know that like you can attain it, and the second thing is it keeps you accountable for actually making it happen.
And that's really important, I think, because a big word that might be a way to underscore your work is a lot of it is about taking agency for yourself and taking the initiative. And people have the right to do that. I think a big thing for you is you didn't wait for, you were talking about some people who maybe have started popping off in a more public way and things like that. But you're not sitting here waiting for that one. You're not waiting for Oprah to come and scoop you up and discover you, or
Yeah, Oprah's gonna find me, like, I'm not worried about because Oprah will come eventually.
But that's a big takeaway though. I think people don't give themselves enough respect. That just producing and putting things out there is the big battle. And one of the things that can definitely be reflected in your efforts is that you are not waiting for anybody. You are definitely kicking ass and producing and putting things out there. And that's really, should the day come and, we hope the blessing, should the day come that even more and more people bring visibility to your work.
Yeah.
Somebody might tell the story that you were overnight, right?
Yeah.
And will have been sleeping on all the years and the months and days that you worked and developed and worked at your craft and put it out there. So
yeah. And also the thing, I was talking to I talk to my one friend about this all the time. He's like, you don't necessarily even want to be an overnight success. Because let's say 1,000 people want to buy my hoodies and I only have 15 hoodies. Like, I want to also be at a point where I can build myself up to be a success. So that's another thing to even think about.
And, getting deep on that side, because a big thing for me is I love writing. That's kind of my creative outlet it's like, let's say if we looked at just using your Instagram as a superficial example, if you look at the total body of your work from the, and I don't want to brutalize what you have a label for them. Like the hooping art versus the different sorts of styles that you've had, some of the portrait levels and things like that for Uplift. If the first thing somebody saw was Uplift, just like your very first attempt at Uplift, and like, that's it, that's the next big thing, and then you blew up on that, but you haven't even had a chance to craft other things. So now you're just stuck at that one level, and it's almost like you'd never be able to get a chance to grow into something, or people, you know what I mean? It's
yeah, that's an interesting point.
I talk about that with music friends a lot. Is like, we'll have a discussion with friends who we'll talk about like the sophomore jinx thing, but a lot of times the sophomore jinx is, a music artist spent their whole life trying to get discovered, get signed, blah, blah, blah. And that first album is the culmination of 10, 15, 20 years of them, being alone somewhere, writing, whatever. Yeah. Then they hit it big, and that next album, they've got a label being like, we need something in 6 months. So,
yeah.
But coming right back and staying very much focused on your work, Myron, it's, we're kind of winding down here, but I wanted to sort of leave a little bit of a space to sort of just double back down on, for you, what are you hoping? And we've talked about the creative processes a little bit, but what are the things that you really enjoy seeing people get out of your work for you? What are maybe there's a story or two that you can think of people's reactions to what you've done? and been doing?
I think there's this one time this one dude was telling me how he would ride the train every day and he'd see my mural and how like kind of helped save his life in a way. And I was like, damn, that's deep. You know? So like I think just as artists and creators, the things you output are seen even without you knowing. Um, so, you know, you kind of have a lot of power in that sense. And so, you know, that's something that I still remember. And it kind of reminds me that what I put into the world can really like do something for somebody. You know, another thing is really cool when friends tell your friends about you, you know? So people reach out and they're like, hey, my friend told me about you. I'm like, what? Like, like that's a really cool thing. Like when you get so excited that you want to tell somebody else about somebody, that's really cool. So no, those are like really memorable things that I've experienced just being an artist.
Great. That's such a good piece to tell. And I know, you know, I'll tell a story that some of the network are going to find funny. But one of the first places that I got to engage your work was actually at this coffee shop called Sip of Hope.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in a bathroom.
Yeah.
And I had spent a lot of time at that place, still do. And in the restroom, it's just the uplift. It's kind of like a universe of uplift because it covers all the different walls.
Yeah.
And because it's frequent in there was an individual who I happened to be engaged, you know, talking with and meeting there, and they were in a bed space. And we were at some point in a conversation, and they needed to take a step away, and they went into the restroom, and they happened to go into that one by chance. I didn't know.
Yeah.
And they came back with a little sense of humor, and they sat down, and this is the first time they were at this place, and they were sharing this story about how, you know, I went in there and I was just, you know, going to go do my business, but I ended up just sitting on the stall and staring at the murals in there. And the mural reminded me of, you know, of my father and right on their shoulders. And I don't know if that's what the artist was thinking about, but it really made me sort of calm and get this sense of peace. And I don't know what the artist was trying to do there and this, that, or the other, but I just couldn't stop telling myself stories watching the art, just looking at this. And for those who wouldn't know, those particular murals were not in color at the time. They were black and white. So the person was sort of just talking about filling in their own thing. And it just brought them down to a level. And it wasn't as dramatic as it talked them off a ledge or something like that, or changed their whole world view on everything. But based on what you were just saying, you know, this had to be months, maybe even a year plus since you had done the work.
Mm-hmm.
And your work still helped connect and tell a story in somebody else's life. And for those who are watching, our first guest in the festival today was Dom, was earlier today talking about some of his literature, and his stories can go on to take a life of their own and help other people. And I find it beautiful that we can connect that with you and your work, that you're putting things out into the universe that, you know, they're not yours anymore in a way. They're the community's, but in the same way, you have the power to directly touch and impact people in a way that, you know, you could have never necessarily guessed, but it is powerful and it's amazing. And that's such a great insight of yours to have, you know, it's great.
Thank you.
And I think this is a really good place to sort of put a pin in things. You know, it's so exciting to watch your work. And for those who are watching right now, if you're listening or engage this content in the days to follow, of course, we've got all of Myron's links and content. You can check it out. And if you go to the AGUH.org, you can get to all of Myron's socials. If you don't, you know, obviously they're here in chat, but it's really important for you all to be able to appreciate Myron Laban is an incredible artist. It's based out of Chicago, but not limited. And before we totally get out of here, let's see how is the live piece going? A little live art. There you go. Loving it. Getting a little cloud touching. Loving it.
Yep, these are just clouds. It's looking good. It's looking good. It's a work in progress.
And Myron, I don't want to put you up on the spot of as if you're the sage on the stage, as Dom, our first guest, was just saying. But is there anything you'd like to share with us, especially maybe people aspiring in their own creative worlds and things like that? Maybe a little nugget of truth you like to sort of run by, aside from the bangers that you've already dropped on us today?
Well, find people who are doing what you're doing and talk to them. That's always a good thing to do. It's good to believe in yourself. I think I believe in myself so much, you could think I'm delusional, but I'm okay with that. I think you should just trust your intuition. Be honest with yourself where you need to grow and put in the work. It's not easy, and I still have a very, very long way to go. And I'm gonna keep putting in the work, and it's all you can really do.
Well, thank you so much for that. And as a last piece before I wind down, a little bit of a brain buster question.
Yeah.
For my entirely own merriment. Controversial question now.
Yeah.
When you're putting on your shoes, okay,
Yeah.
are you sock, shoe, or are you sock, shoe?
Easy. That's socks, and then you put your shoes on.
Okay.
You gotta put both socks on before you put your shoes, Carl.
See, I mean, people answer differently, so
they have to change their ways because this is a sock shoe household.
I love it. Well, Myron, you are one awesome badass, and I cannot thank you enough for making time for us in the network. So
Thanks
thank you
so
for
much,
joining us,
Paul.
brother.
Have a good day.
You too. Take care.